on the Can Micro Takaful End Poverty. So, this is part of the Digital Financial Inclusion Challenge 2020. Workshop Day 2, I heard that you had a good time on Workshop Day 1 yesterday. So let's continue and had very lively discussions and a lot of questions yesterday. So let's continue that in this session as well. We have 3 panelists joining us, all great folks. So each of them will attempt to answer the very tough question, can micro takaful end poverty? 3 people from very diverse background. Let me just quickly introduce them. So if I say your name, just like put your hand up or something, just like wave or something, all right? The first person is Wan Ahmad Najib, Chief Strategy and Digital Distribution Officer from FWD. He's the one who represents the companies that create micro takaful products. So they are the product creators, right? The second person would be Ms. Siti, the CEO of Selangor Women Empowerment Institute. Wave at the audience. Ms. is representing the organization that does a lot of on-the-ground and outreach work, including with the B40 communities. So we would like to see how does the people who she works with find the products based on her own experience. And then last and not least is Mr. Gregory Hope, is the research associate from Khazanah Research Institute, and he represents
Did we lose Suraya there with the connection?
Yes. Let's just wait for her to come back very soon.
Yeah. It's Saturday morning. I think a lot of people are online.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just praying that my internet doesn't fail me. Like
Touch wood. Good to see you again, Wan Najib and Gregory.
Yeah,
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, we met a few times before. I used to be with Yayasan Khazanah. I'm not sure if you remember. I used to liaise with Chris a lot,
Yes.
but he's gone to the UK.
Yeah,
I
that's
think.
right.
Alright, Suraya's back. Hi Suraya, back. You back?
Yes, I am back. Oh, was I broken up just now? Never mind. Okay, I will repeat the question. Mr. Najib?
Oh, it's really a question. Okay.
We don't need further introduction.
The internet is weird, is it? Okay. I did a whole section. Joining us this morning for the session of Can Micro Takaful End Poverty is Mr. Wan Ahmad Najib, the Chief Strategy and Digital Distribution Officer from FWD, representing the company that creates those micro takaful products. The second panelist is Ms. Siti Kamariah, CEO of Selangor Women Empowerment Institute, representing the organization which does a lot of on-the-ground and outreach work with the B40 communities, so the target audience of those micro takaful products. And the third but not least is Mr. Gregory Ho, the research associate from Khazanah Research Institute, representing the research organization which have done a study analyzing income and consumption patterns of Malaysian households. So we're going to start with the first question. The audience, you can ask your questions anytime, and in the last 10-20 minutes, we will take your questions. So go crazy. Just now in the backstage, you're saying, oh, we hope we don't get many questions. No, ask. Okay, Mr. Najib.
Yep.
Right off the bat, can you please share with the audience how is micro takaful different from takaful products, and how theoretically can it end poverty?
Okay, firstly, I know we're short of time, so just thank you, Suraya, thank you, Siti, Kamariah, thank you, Gary, for sharing this panel with us. I think you're going to give good inputs to participants. So now, jump into the question. Before I go there, so this is a very important question, and I want to set the tone. So I'm going to take a bit of time to actually try and explain this. But before that, so we're going to go in 3 perspectives. Before even going to micro takaful. So I've been following the Digital Financial Inclusion Challenge from the start, from your networking, your works, and a lot of this, the whole journey, even your Instagram posts. And I'm glad to see there's a team that went down and actually did some research. The content that you've been sharing on micro takaful seems to show that you do understand what micro takaful is. But from the conversations that we had, even when Huilin were presenting yesterday, there were a lot of distilled questions around why takaful insurance has this negative connotation to it, right? And like it or not, takaful insurance within the whole financial system is probably the least popular. If it's popular, it's for the wrong reasons. Suraya would know this better, right? It gets bashed a lot. People will say tipu lah, ambil duit je lah, and things like that. What else? It has a lot of misrepresentation, and it is the most misunderstood financial product out there, right? And there's a lot of reasons to this. One of it, because of certain group of people, certain group of agents, or even takaful companies or insurance in how we represent our products. But fundamentally, it's also the fact that insurance products or takaful products are complex in nature, while compared to the other financial solutions, it's actually very complex in the sense that it has a lot of varieties of protection out there that you might not even know, right, exists in the space. And because it's a contractual product, the contracts are long, there are jargons that you don't understand. I've been in the industry forever. Sometimes I get mixed up with the jargons that and then the terms that is being put forward. But more importantly, why it is being misunderstood most is because the product itself, the benefit of the product itself, is not immediate. And human nature, we want something that is immediate. When you take a credit card, you get money, you get spending power. You take a financial a loan or financing product, you get money, right? But in takaful product, it's not meant to be that. And the fundamental, the original intent of it is to give you that financial safety net. Right? But because of this market pressure that people been putting on insurers, on takaful operators, we actually innovated. And that's why over the last 2 decades, you'll be seeing a lot of takaful products tend to be skewed to savings and have savings and investment elements in it. But this has a bad side to it because people get misled and strayed from the original intention of a takaful protection being that financial safety net, that financial assistance in case anything happens to you. It's for you sometimes, a lot of times it's for your loved ones. So that is an important concept that we need to understand before we answer even what micro takaful is. All these things that I've been talking about in the last, 1-2 minutes, or maybe 3 minutes, is just elaborating and showing to you how complex it is, right? And micro takaful is really not really much different. I had one colleague, she's online anyway, Intan, who helped give me a very good analogy to it. It's really not much difference, but it's just simply the fact we try to strip that product just now, that complicated product just now, so that it can be as affordable as can be, yet still meet the protection objectives of the intended audience. Right? That's what micro takaful basically is stripping all these sexy bells and whistles, making it as simple, as understandable, and as affordable to the audience, and making it and yet still meeting the objective. It's just like how a low-cost airline is. You want to fly somebody to another place. Before, when Malaysian Airlines were there, not everybody could fly. Now you have Asia, Firefly, and all those things that help make a lot of dreams of people come true to fly. So that's what micro takaful is about, right? So I hope that gives a simple understanding of what micro takaful is compared to takaful. Now, the next question, a very important question, why this digital financial inclusion challenge is developed in the first place, and why we are all here, and why all the 30 chosen ones, participants, very smart people, are here to try and help crack this problem. Because so how takaful can theoretically solve poverty? Okay, first and foremost, we have to understand that takaful is not there to just like make somebody rich the other day. This is not skip cepat kaya. That's for sure, right? But Takaful itself is not the solution to poverty. And poverty itself is a very big problem that needs to be solved with various components, right? You have the immediate one, people need food, right? COVID-19 shows that. That is an immediate need. Then we have education. Then we have microfinancing to help them start business and things like that, right? Oh, thank you, Alina. So, so Takaful itself comes inside in the sense that it complements this whole solution, right? Give me just 3 more minutes, okay, and try to give this very important point about Takaful, how Takaful can end poverty. Because if you talk to any B40 down there, they would put this probably at the last of the mind. A few months back, we did with Aros Academy, we did a program when Siti Kamariah was there in PPS Sungai Bonus, right? We got 21 youth between the ages of 14, 15 to 19 to join this Fund of Our Life camp where they did financial exploration, blah 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 blah. I won't bore you with that. You can go and visit the Fund for Life portal and see the program. But what was interesting to know that was that out of this 21% of PPR Sungai Bonus is just in Setapak, just not far from it. 60% of the participants in that 21 were school dropouts, right? And that's an important point that you need to understand, because we're not trying to solve complicated problems and things like that. It's just that when we and that particular program, we've run this program many times, this camp, but that camp had touched me in various ways that I it was like Hulen said, life changing moment, right? Because when we asked some of the participants, there were a lot of factors. Some I won't disclose, but one of them, one lady, one guy, or one, I can't remember, the person said, I had to stop school because my mom passed away due to cancer 2 years back, and we didn't have money to move forward. Imagine if the mom had some cash and left some misfortune. She had a micro Takaful product with just maybe 5,000, 10,000. The kid might not have left, might not have need to leave school. And we know education is important in order to bring someone out from poverty. So that's the whole angle. All right, go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Najib, for that wonderful explanation. What you explained is not, especially for that person, it's not an isolated case. It happens a lot. And here I just want to quickly quote a BNM paper that was released titled Expanding Insurance in Takaful. It said that while the national working population have 50% of them have insurance, but the urban and M40 and T20 communities versus the rural and B40 communities. Therefore, there are definitely a big gap there. And you also mentioned some of the kind of challenges. And there is also another BM paper. They actually talked about all the way back from 2016. The discussion paper first came out by BNM in 2016, and they outlined 4 principles which micro Takaful must be needs driven, it must be accessible, and it must be efficient. So these are the responsibility for the product creator and distributors to make all of that. So you mentioned one particular term which is really important, and I want to ask this to Miss Kamariah. The term that you use is financial safety net, and it is very true that for how does the people who you do outreach work with, how
Suraya? So I lost you a little bit there, but I suppose I think I get the gist of the question. I hope you can hear me clearly. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The Institute Wanita Berdaya Selangor, or the Selangor Women's Empowerment Institute, we do a lot of programs with women on the ground in Selangor, and on top of that, we also do research. And our research showed that in the recent COVID-19 pandemic, the women were and their households were worst hit, whereby 25% of them have lost their job during COVID, and not only that, losing their job is one thing, but quite a number of them actually do not have enough savings to last them more than a month, or no savings at all. I think, if I'm not mistaken, our research showed that less than 20% of them actually has savings that can last them for longer than a month. And this is where the issue is, and it's exacerbated for women, because for women, only 25% have access to financial tools, and our statistics also show a worrying figure of 6% that actually had resorted to Ahlong. 16% of those who had to go to pajak gadai, and all these are showing, not because they lack financial knowledge, but I think the situation that a lot of the B40 and even some middle class, the lower middle class, the ones who are earning the range of 4,000 to 5,000, they are actually struggling, and COVID has exacerbated these families, especially the ones who are earning daily wages. Yeah, and the struggle is real, because quite a number of them already have more than one jobs, Suraya, and because of this, I think just because of the sheer fatigue of having to go through their daily life, and also made worse with lack of nutrition, which is also a major issue with a lot of PPRs. So there's a UNICEF research that showed this. And so if you put yourself in their shoes, it's very hard to even focus on things other than their day-to-day living. And when we talk about financial inclusion, to them, I think the most sophisticated among them, if they have savings, that's good enough. So we talk about solutions for the bottom billion, yeah, globally, that a lot have been discussed about how do we actually build social safety nets for them. I do agree, a form of micro insurance would help, especially one that is affordable, like 10 ringgit per month goes a long way towards giving them a cushion in case of emergencies, because like I mentioned earlier, for them to save emergency fund of 3 months to 6 months, it will probably take them forever, or it will never happen. But at the same time, for them to set aside 10 ringgit a month, which may sound very simple, but for that action to happen, financial literacy needs to be improved. And financial literacy is not something that was taught at school. I didn't learn anything. I did learn maths, and you know that when you're in primary school, you learn how to count your money, you know how many apples we have. But I think how great it would be if we had actually learned how to do a budget, for example. Because once you started to do budgeting, then you realize 10 ringgit a month has already been put aside automatically, and you know that it derives some benefits for your long-term sustainability. So those are my short questions, and at Institute Wanita Berdaya, we try to educate the B40 community through our Jaringan Muafakat Wanita Berdaya program, where we go to meet. I think we've met more than 8,000 so far in the last 2 years, to teach them on financial literacy, to teach the mothers on the importance of not just savings, but managing your money through various forms of tools and strategies. Thank you. Over to you, Suraya.
Thank you so much. After this, I will make it a habit to post the questions inside the chat box, just in case internet is a little bit wonky. All right. So the next question goes over to Mr. Gregory. I understand that Khazanah Research Institute have came up with a paper. It's called the Mars. I might be pronouncing this wrong, but demarcating households and integrated income and consumption analysis. So can you share with us your biggest insight and also highlight of the paper, specifically in relation to risk management, takaful, all that good stuff?
Hi, can you guys hear me? So when we first started conducting the research, we were interested specifically in the use of the term B40 in Malaysia as a way to refer to poor people. Now, as we all know, the B40 refers to the bottom 40% of the population, and this amounts to 2.8 million households earning something lower than 4.8k based on 2019 data lah. So we did many things. We look at household size, their composition, geographical disparities, and most importantly, we look at consumption patterns. Basically, what we found is that, number one, you have to adjust for household size. If you don't adjust for household size, a single person earning 4,000 ringgit is the same with a family of 6 people earning the same 4,000 ringgit. They are both treated as B40, although the standard of living that these two households face would be vastly different. In our report, we show exactly how that can be done, and it can be done rather easily. You just do something like a square root rule, and you can adjust for the effect of household size. Then, after adjusting for all these things, when we looked at expenditure, what was very glaring is that the B40 demarcation, the way that Malaysia uses B40, is not very correct. We think that there is a better way to demarcate households, and that way is to have something called B20, M50, and T30. So B20 is the bottom 20%, then the subsequent group is the middle 50% group, and the top group is the top 30%. So if you were to define poor households as households who are only able to fulfill basic needs, that means they are struggling to meet their food, clothing, housing punya needs, then B20 is the group that you should be looking at, because this, within the bottom 20%, memang all they buy are basic need goods. However, we also showed that the next group, the M50, they differ from the B20 group mainly because they purchase more varieties of food, they eat out more often, and they are also able to purchase more household utensils. The higher end of this group can afford things like sending their kids for tuition, but it doesn't mean that this, just because there is the word M, some people might think that, oh, this is the middle class. Actually, they are not. They are also vulnerable to all the various shocks and adverse risk events. So how do you define what the middle class is? So we had a literature review. We scoured the academic journals and whatnot. And from a consumption perspective, the middle class can be characterized by 3 traits. Number one, they can insulate themselves from adverse risk events. And with regards to what we are discussing today, that is the role of insurance lah, but not only insurance. The middle class, sorry, portions of the middle class can also hire professional services to come and give them advice on what to do, how do you set up your business, how do you structure your accounts, etc., etc. But number two, the middle class can invest in their own upward social mobility. And when you look at the middle class, they do things like they hire domestic services, they hire security services, they basically get other people to come and do the things that they should be doing so that they free up their time. There is a lot of consumption in terms of educational materials. They buy a lot of books, they subscribe for online courses, basically things that relates to their own upskilling. And lastly is social signaling, the purchase of things like piano, organ, pictures, decoration, artificial flowers, semua tu lah, those. So these are the 3 traits of the middle class. And we find that if we are looking for this kind of consumption pattern, the middle class is really the top 30 in Malaysia. So it's bottom 20 miskin. The M50, maybe not as miskin as the bottom 20, but still struggling juga, still facing their own set of vulnerabilities. And then the middle class, the driver of these kinds of consumption in Malaysia is actually the top 30%. So that's the basic findings of the research.
Thank you, Greg, for that explanation. I am aware that there are new classification, and that might be a question for Mr. Najib on how this new classification is taken into account. I also want to repeat some of the statistics in case internet just now was didn't show. BNM released a paper called Expanding Insurance and Takaful Solutions for the Underserved Segment, and inside here we can find out that there's a huge disparity between people who have insurance and those who have not. For example, the national working population, 50.4% of them have insurance, but only 30.3% of the B40 have insurance. And here we're not even taking consideration into enough insurance. It's just penetration rate. So there might significant more amount of people are underinsured. That is a fact. So, Mr. Najib, as a company that creates those products, right, and taking into account how BNM has outlined the principles of how micro takaful products should be, which is following the four principles. It has to be simple, it has to be protection needs driven, it has to be accessible, and it has to be efficient. How does the product creation of FWD Kasih, which is a micro takaful created under FWD Takaful, and taking into consideration the challenges that you highlighted, that Gagri highlighted, that Ms. Kamariah highlighted, how was all of that taken into consideration into the creation of FWD Kasih?
Very challenging question, but okay. So when we developed FWD Kasih, I think we wanted to Suraya mentioned a lot of stats. I think Gregory gave a good insight into the research that they've done, and Siti mentioned but the real things that she faces when she deals with groups, right? So we wanted to create a product that and in the industry has been talking about in Takaful it's about 16% last year penetration rate, combined with insurance is about 55%. So you take the racial the racial consideration into it. B40 mainly consists of the Malay market and things like that. That's why Takaful is very low. So we wanted to create a product that actually means a lot to actually that can get out to this group of people and give a meaningful give meaning to them, right? So we actually it was a tedious process. We actually engaged University of Utara Malaysia to do a research on B40, and we got an understanding of how much they can afford or they want and things like that. And you'll be surprised to know that because the UUM folks actually went down to the ground. They went to various groups of B40 segments, the fishermen, the farmers, the urban poor, and actually sat down and had focus group discussions with them, and then try to I said what are your pain points, and is Takaful important to you, or do you actually think about it? They say actually in actual fact they do, right? They are also worried, like a fisherman. There was a story about a fisherman. He said that hey, I'm worried when I go to the sea and don't come back, and my family leaves behind, right? And similarly, I think a lot of the gig workers these days, right? And you read on social media, the food panda riders accidentally get into an accident, etc. And I'm sure there are loved ones that they leave behind. But again, knowing that their income is irregular and all those things, how much can they put aside to actually get some protection, right? So all this was taken into consideration to actually provide that. So we wanted to give maximum value to the consumers. But there's this paradox where you have to understand when we do an insurance product or Takaful product, there are a lot of costs being bumped into it. And it is cost that you sometimes burn, right? Because we were trying to bring the price point so low, we can't do it paper. Imagine printing 1,000 paper, right? That might cost RM1 or whatever, RM2, color and things like that. Giving out to the B40, at the end of the day, only one or two taking it up. You burn that cost. And the only way to do it was to actually try and find ways of making it efficient, cost efficient. And the only way was to make it digital. And that's where every kasih is an online product. But there's always this paradox. When you do that, how do you actually then reach? And that's a question that is still ongoing. I don't have a solution to that. But at least right now, what we have developed for every kasih was, Siti Kamariah mentioned 10 ringgit a month. We've managed to develop a product that goes down to 2 ringgit a month for female and to the dollars 2 ringgit 50 cents a month for male between the age of 13 to 39. At least a 10,000 cover. You think 10,000 is not a lot. Maybe for us, but for them, from the research that we did with UM, some of them were only expecting 5,000 cover in case anything happens to them. They know. They said, kalau saya bayar sikit, saya tahu saya dapat sikit. Itu pakcik tu jawab. So they know. But again, it's that the access to get to that, to have that product that actually they can actually pay for it. Because there's no point having a product so expensive. Next month they stop paying. Because next month might be the month that something happens to them. Right? It's creating that. So all these considerations were taken into consideration when we develop every currency. I think I'll stop there so that we have more time for questions and things like that.
Thank you so much. I want to bring back something that Ms. Kamariah mentioned earlier, which is financial literacy. So now, Mr. Najib have already told us that to help in cost-saving measures in distribution of micro takaful products, that a lot of it, or maybe even all of it, are distributed online. However, that poses a problem. You brought up, Ms. Kamariah, that there is a financial literacy problem. So, have any of your the people who you work with in your outreach have mentioned anything about the difficulties of understanding takaful product or insurance products in general, and have they said anything about the reasons why they choose not to go through with it for whatever reason, given that now the price is so low, it's only 10 ringgit per month, so now the problem must be something else, maybe lack of understanding, but financial literacy, like you said. So how have your experience been?
Thank you, Suraya. Building upon Greg's and Najib's point earlier, that financial literacy is a very big issue because due to the lack of literacy, they have also fallen into a lot of rip-offs and scams out there. Yeah, so it's actually quite common for the B40 to actually be ripped off of their lifelong savings. And because of that, once bitten, twice shy. I think that's what has happened. And there are other insurance companies that have been charging exorbitant amounts as well. So without understanding on the right products for their situation, I think they've also fallen prey. Which is why I think for the bottom billion or the B40, there needs to be a form of responsible financing services that serves them, this community. And I know I had a long chat with Najib during the challenge last night at the PPR, whereby I think that's their vision and initiative to educate people on what's right for them. Because at the end of the day, it's not whether it's 10 ringgit or 200 ringgit or 1,000 ringgit a month. Are those solutions the right one for you? Is this something that you can afford? And is this something that that will help you in the longer term? I know also in that session, the PPR, once they lose their job, for example, the main breadwinner got into an accident, for example, like the Grab rider that you mentioned, he's a dad. He's probably the head of a household somewhere. And once that happens, the whole family will suffer, not just during that event, but the rest for the rest of their lives. And this is where having financial social safety net helps. But how do we get them to realize this organically and without it sounding like a sales speech? This is where we need to come in. This is where we have come in to share with them, whereby by understanding this is what needs to happen and for the family, and it's important that they take up social safety net. Is what's going to help them in the long run. But unfortunately, to reach them is also quite difficult. I know, for example, Najib and team Arus Academy, when they did the program, they went to the PPR and they approached the youth groups there, and when we spoke to them, quite a number of them, the parents, they don't get to see them very often. They go out very early in the morning and come back midnight because they have 2 or 3 jobs. So for them to make time to learn about financial literacy is another matter. So we need to think of innovative ways to get to them. I think through bite-sized information, not the kind that you envision whereby they sit on a 4-hour Zoom to learn about financial products and literacy. So maybe something like SMS that send at regular intervals. So which is why I also applaud the initiatives that's done in collaboration with Arus Academy and FWD Takaful, because to me, what they're trying to do is trying to be innovative in educating and also in creating financial inclusion, and that's what we need really. A lot of initiatives that's done by NGO and civil societies have been tailored in such a way as what we imagine financial literacy should be carried out for this individual. Having said that, I do enjoy, Suraya, your sessions on Ringgit or Ringgit. I occasionally read your blogs, and I love what you wrote about debt snowballs, and also a lot of other ways, and the way you wrote it in such a way that is your experience, and so it's easy to understand. I love the fact, and congratulations on your wedding. I love the fact you went to great lengths explaining the impacts of getting married and having a budget. So to that kind of education really helps to make sure that you humanize the knowledge. Okay, thank you. Over to you, Suraya. Okay, I'm glad I made you really laugh. This session is getting a lot more fun now.
Thank you. Um, you're very kind. We're gonna start answering some questions. Before that, I'm gonna ask one last question to Mr. Gregory. For all of the audience, can you please look at the questions segment? I'm gonna start asking them questions based on the number of upvotes. So the questions that you want to ask the panelists, please vote on them, and then we'll go by that rotation. So one last one for Mr. Gregory, just very quickly. We talked earlier about the long-termness of Makro Takaful product is not something that you get immediately, right? So you know that it's something for the future. What are some examples, perhaps, that has been used in other countries or in other cases, which have helped to nudge people to participate in things that are more long-term in nature?
Hi. When you say something that is more long term in nature, are you referring to stuff like retirement schemes? Because that's quite long term, right? So I think in when you're looking at the pre-COVID situation, there is increasing participation in all forms of investment, be it from things like ESG, the retirement schemes, fintech, mobile payments, etc., etc. But in this post-COVID situation, really nobody knows. With regards to participation among the poor, I'd say that the research that is done all over the world, from Thailand to Philippines, Nigeria, India, they all seem to suggest that the poor remain relatively uninsured. If you're coming from a poor household, it is not likely that you would have an insurance policy that would protect you over a long time horizon, so to speak. What is observed in these countries is that, actually, I think, I'm not too sure about Malaysia, but I think it follows the same pattern. What the poor normally do is that they borrow money from their informal networks, and these are their neighbors, their relatives, and their friends. In an ideal world where risk is well insured, household consumption would more or less be the same, even if, let's say, somebody met an accident, or somebody fallen sick or something like that. But this is not observed. So, for example, in many of these countries like Indonesia, consumption is recorded to drop about 20% when the said household member falls severely ill. And a similar pattern is also observed in Philippines and many other countries. So I would say that with regards to long-term protection in general, this is not really observed among the poorer segments of society. Maybe among the richer, the whole market is growing, but among these segments, it is not. We don't really find evidence of that lah.
All I'm hearing is yes, we can take on that challenge. Okay, we'll start answering on the questions. The the one that got the most upward is targeted towards you, Mr. Najib. So it says, can you please share more on the conditions that make micro takaful profitable for insurance providers and whether these companies enter the market for profit or out of social responsibility or a mix of both? Take it away.
All right. So I've looked at the panel, the questions. So there's 3 questions that I think I can take on in one shot. So I'll take it on one shot, right? Number 1, can you please speak more on conditions for micro takaful? So conditions is try to ensure that the cost that's incurred to actually maintain or get the product out to the audience is minimal as possible, right? And that looks at how you communicate it out, what platform you use it, how you charge the contribution collection. There's charge everywhere. Trust me, in every financial solution is all nothing's free in this world, right? So it's aggregating all these costs and ensuring that it doesn't hit loss to the operator, so that we continue to be able to actually provide this to this segment. And we're hoping when we develop this kind of product, there's volume enough that actually it can sustain and cross subsidize some of these costs when it reaches economies of scale. The question was whether this company enter the market, profit or our social responsibility. I can't answer for everyone. For me personally, when we wanted to do this, of course, it's really I've been sick of hearing these complaints about penetration rate being about only 50%, and we were always talking about B40 and all these segments not being covered and not doing anything about it. That's wrong, right? On a personal basis, that's what I believe. But given the fact there's a lot of effort and there's still a lot of problems that needs to be solved to actually make this product accessible, and that for to really answer the 4 concepts that Suraya mentioned, right, and the tenang concept. I'm sure that these players that when they actually entered to this, they didn't do it just for the sake of money, because a lot of people are actually putting efforts, the product developers, the system developers, everybody coming together to develop the product. So I'm sure that it's not just out of profit, and they have that. We are also good people. We want to help the world for sure, right? Okay, next question is that every country only provides cover with household income below 5,000, right? My M40 is also vulnerable to shocks. Okay, first and foremost, we have to understand why is it RM2 250 for the B40? Because affordability is relative to your lifestyle, to your segment, right? When I was lepak-lepak at kedai mamak Damansara Utama when I was younger, I would always order teh or ice. Because if I order Milo ice, it would be $1.50 and it was expensive to me. I would order teh or ice because it's RM1. Similarly, B40 needs this kind of price points. M40, there are also affordable products out there. For instance, we have I'm the chief digital distribution officer. The online products are all under my purview. They are also cheap. You can still get 100,000 cover for less than RM50, and 100,000 cover might be more applicable to the M40 because you have more financial obligations. You have a bigger house. You have a bigger car, right? You have Wi-Fi. You have an iPhone, right? So you need that cover, higher cover, but at affordable price. Look out for it. Point Siti mentioned is very important to look what you need and not have all those bells and whistles just to be in trend with insurance product. Look at what you need and why you're taking it up. And the last question that I would touch, only microtrago only covers unexpected events, happens one-off. Even we expose for them, it's not worth for them to settle because they cannot get same benefit with Takaful. What do you think about this? Okay, this is a misconception. Again, coming back to when I first answered the question, right? Not all Takaful products originally does not pay anything when you get something because it's always protection. But there's a lot of Takaful products out there that's developed to actually entice people to actually take it up. Right? That's why you have some payout sometimes and things like that. But again, One Siti's point was very important, and we should always think about it when we take Takaful products for ourselves or when we promote to this vulnerable group of people. What is actually important for them, right? And then coupled with all this financial literacy, and then why you all are here is try to find that message to send this important message to this B40 this B40 community that this is important for you right now, right? And I think that's where I'll stop and pass back to Suraya.
Thank you for that. I'm looking through the question, and Miss Karia seems to have a little bit of problem signing back in. So that's okay. As and when she comes in, we'll continue with her input. I would like to take the next question, which is directed towards Mr. Gregory. Some interest to the new classifications B20 and M50. So the question goes, since income is a flow concept, I was wondering if there were a lot of movements between B20 and M50 in terms of moving between categories. What has the data shown?
Hi, unfortunately, I have to say that the data that we use is, yes, income is a flow concept. However, the data that we have employed is a snapshot data. So we took it is at a particular point in time based on the Department of Stats. However, I would say that actually, if you think about vulnerability is transient, right? So you can be okay for a very long time, and something happens, a shock occurs in your life. Maybe you can't account for it, and then this shock can potentially move the level of cash that you have below a certain level, maybe below the level that is necessary for you to sustain what is called a suitable standard of living lah. However we wish to define it. When we look at the data, we find what is interesting is that in terms of insurance, in terms of these kinds of risk protection, even between the B20 and the M50 group, you don't really see it. You only see it in the top 30. Where insurance becomes prominent is in the top 30 group. And we also accounted for the fact that we only consider prominence if it constitutes a significant proportion of your budget. So as rightly mentioned by my esteemed panelists, it could be the case where it's a suitable price point, and then only people would consider purchasing a policy that suits their needs. I'd say that the one of the very important things to consider from when we look at movements between, let's say, B20 to M50 or M50 to T30 is that if we were to move forward as a nation, we need to show progress in these two domains. Number one, we need to show that we have reduced the proportion of society that's living under poverty, that is really miskin lah. But number two, also that after you move people out of poverty, it cannot be that they remain vulnerable forever, right? There must be some sort of way where you can move from this point of vulnerability, this M50 group, towards an aspirational household. That means you're free to pursue your hobbies, you're free to invest in your own social mobility. You have more freedom to live out life in the way that you want to live out. Contohnya lah, and that one, unfortunately, we do not see much evidence of also lah.
Thank you for that. Ms. Kamariah, I'm glad you are able to join us back again. We have one question here, which I think will be perfect for you. So earlier in the discussion, you talked about how some of the people who you work with said things like, they had bad experience with it from other people. You said the phrase once bitten, twice shy. So this question says, Micro Takaful has been around for a few years. However, the public still feels this plan is very asing to them. And once they're told about it, statements like, it's too good to be true, and etc. Comes out. So what are your thoughts on the amount of exposure given on it? And maybe I want to tweak this question a little bit on, in what cases do the people who you work with on the ground has favorable view towards accepting Micro Takaful or insurance products in general?
Thanks for that, Suraya. Sorry, I was having some problems with my internet as well. So the individuals that we met, they are mostly women, and I hope the gentlemen here don't feel offended, but I find it a lot easier to convince women. Although they may not have high education, quite sometimes they only have like standard 6 education, for example, but financial education makes sense to them naturally. Maybe because a lot of the women that we've dealt with, they are the ones who have been um, holding the purse strings. So the moment you explain to them, Kak, kalau RM10 sebulan ni kalau jadi apa-apa, akak dapat RM50,000. Kalau apa ada kematian ke, sekurang-kurangnya apa kariat kematian apa semua ada orang cover. Oh ya ke? RM10 ah? RM10. Okey, RM10 boleh. Apa tu, tapi akak tak ada bank account, macam mana? You see or not? Dia straight to action oriented, and I find that is as simple as having a conversation. Because dia memang rajin, dia nak tahu macam tu, dan macam oh ni peluang. Tapi at the same time, a lot of these women, macam contohnya our research showed that close to 50% of these women do not have access to transport, tak ada internet access. So to serve this population, you tak boleh macam macam everything online contohnya, because they only have a mobile phone tapi tak ada data, they rely on the 1 gig data. So understanding this segment's consumer behavior is also very important in serving them, because often enough whatever support that we want to give them doesn't.
Miss Kamariah, I think we kind of lost you a little bit, but that's okay. Are you coming back?
She was on the
Yeah.
road.
I think she brought up a really amazing point, which is women do understand the conversations do help a lot in the trust aspect. We talk a lot about the trust factor, and one of the reasons why people don't join these things is because they don't know whether they can trust it. And again, understandably, there are a lot of opportunities who take advantage of people online, offline. All of you know about this. I actually see one question targeted towards me, which is like, how do I do my own financial literacy efforts? And it's more or less echoing what Miss Kamariah said, which is conversation, it's trust, it is I would also include non-judgmental into it. Based on my own experience, people really hate being talked down upon, and they really hate the type of marketing that says, oh tak sayang family ke, or like you ingat apa ni tak sayang anak ke, or like things like that. They really hate it. So fear-based, shame-based type of advertising coming from distributors, right? Agents, distributors. It makes people not want to proceed anymore. And there's some research that do talk about how shame-based advice really doesn't work. But again, there's some things that cater to all folks. But generally speaking, we are at around 10:03. I can go on forever. So Alina and Fun for Life folks, if I'm going over, please let me know, or just cut everything all together. I might ask one question from the audience that can be taken by both of you. Feel free to interpret this however that you want. I'm going to take one of the ones that come from YouTube chat. We are talking about I guess what do you call it, distribution. So yes, they are distributed online. Ms. Kamariah talked about this as well. This is one of the challenges. Some people don't have data even. So Mr. Najib, how does FWD plan to address that challenge? And to Gregory, what are some examples that are used in low internet penetration countries that can help in distribution? So maybe Gregory, you want to go first?
Let me first preface that and say that I have not studied this aspect specifically, but I say that with regards to Malaysia, actually that's a very interesting point. If you don't mind, can I just share a little bit more about some of the findings from consumption? One findings that we found is that among the poorer segment, you would think that okay, what is the best form of internet connection? If you ask me, I would go for Unify or Time broadband connection because it's the most stable. It's the one that can give me an unlimited bandwidth for me to do what I want on the internet, to effectively use the platform. Can, because we now live in a digitalized age. But when we look at consumption, right, among the poorer segments of society in Malaysia, most of them actually use prepaid cards as a means to access the internet. They don't have an internet connection. And memang pun, if you think about the rural segments of society, there is little penetration in terms of the internet connectivity, but I think the government's doing a lot to strengthen the infrastructure. But even among urban poor, the people in the PPRs, one would assume that the PPR is dilengkapi with the set, with internet connection. Actually, no. A lot of them actually use prepaid mobile cards as a means to access the internet. And in that sense, yes, I think what was brought up just now is very important. The way and the it's not only limitations dari segi wang, it's also limitations dari segi, I need to spend within this bandwidth so that I don't have to pay more in terms of internet connection. And quite frankly, I think how society is structured for the makes it a very sad situation for the poor, because as you might have guessed, if you were to purchase prepaid cards to access the internet, you would probably be paying a higher cost for internet connectivity as compared to me. I use the internet much more, but although I may pay a higher amount, but the cost per unit of use for me would be much lower. So I think there are many grounds that there are many things that we can do to sort of improve the situation for the poor. And maybe the correct question to ask is not to. So the question that you asked me is what can be done to improve accessibility of this micro takaful towards segments of society that may not have this internet connection. Maybe the question that we should be asking is what should be done to improve their infrastructure to make digital inclusion more inclusive in that sense, to enable, especially in the time of COVID, right? We asked to work from home. There are many opportunities in digital platforms to be able to access these things. Maybe the question to ask is, how do we provide this infrastructure towards poorer households? But I am aware that this may be outside the scope of this discussion today, but I think that would be the question that I want to push for.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think Mr. Najib also correctly pointed out that the cause of poverty isn't one single thing, it's a combination of things. And it's also not FWD's Takaful job to create more internet towers in rural areas. Not your job, is not your main industry. So for everyone hearing, just know that we are part of this. We are all part of the solution, and it requires a team effort. However, we have to acknowledge that there's a lot of gaps that can still be addressed, and we're all part of the solution, pretty much. So I want to again direct the same question to you, Mr. Najib, knowing that the
Oh no. I lost you, Suraya. Anyway, in essence of time, I try to answer the question. I think the question was that digital and B40, right? It cannot be just what was the question again?
out. 1 second.
I'm here.
All right, take it away. The
Okay,
closing
so
remarks.
all right. So the question was if digital and B40, and then there's also another question from Hadina. Do you think that digital migration would defeat the purpose given reducing connectivity and things like that? So the first and foremost, coming back to the fundamentals, is trying to reduce the cost. So that's why we did digital. But just to to actually just hope that digital can solve the problem is not. And obviously we would need a mixture of strategies to actually reach out to them. So digital is a platform. You can either take it online, or you can also develop partnership models. We have a lot of parties out there that we can work with. Siti is not here. I'm more willing to work with IWB to actually reach out to the single woman using this Afdeh Kasih product. I can and send a troop of people with iPads to actually help them sign up. And it that's why it's the first step is actually just to have that platform that to get it out and make it makes sense, right? Rather than not doing anything about it. And from there, combine it with other solutions out there. I can work with Alina with Aros Academy when I was doing our financial literacy programs and go down to PPRs and actually have a side event to talk to the parents. I can do with Suraya for that matter through her blog and reach out to people who actually have internet connection. With City, with IWB, go out with them down to all the single mothers out there and actually and given the fact that they're easier to actually convince, send a troop of my ladies from the ladies from FWD Takaful to go and be with them and then get them to get on. So that's I think the solution itself needs to be a combination of a lot of people. And then digital itself just cannot. Digital is always an enabler, it's not the solution to everything. That we have to first accept. I think I'll stop there and
Okay. Thank you so much to all panelists. I've gotten a text from Miss Kamariah saying that she's still trying to log in, but in the interest of time, we went over a little bit, but that's okay. It has been an interesting chat. Maybe just a reminder to all participants that what is even stronger than internet accessibility is word of mouth marketing. So you, with the knowledge that you have about micro takaful and how it can be beneficial in so many ways to people who truly need this kind of financial safety net, you can do your own word of mouth marketing, with or without or complementary with digital efforts. So I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to thank all the panelists for their answers, and also to the audience for the questions. Alina, thank you so much, everyone.
thanks for it.
Thanks, Suraya. Thanks, Najib. It's great.